If you're someone with an anxious attachment style, conflict can really feel like life or death. Your heart races, your mind is going at a million miles an hour, and you're suddenly saying all of these words to try and be heard, to try and get your point across, to try and convey how much this thing means to you. And despite all of your best efforts, it feels like everything that you're trying is actually making things worse and pushing someone further away. That no matter how you try and say it, they're still getting defensive, they're still shutting you down, they're still dismissing what you're trying to say. And it leaves you feeling so desperate and powerless, and you can see that the whole thing is totally ineffective, and yet the idea of just letting it go feels really impossible. If that little picture that I've just painted resonates with you, know that it is so common, it makes so much sense. I have been there more times than I can count. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 really simple, actionable tips to totally transform the way that you think about and approach conflict, particularly if you're someone who's in a relationship with an avoidant partner, so that you can radically increase your chances of actually being heard and getting what you need out of a conversation, rather than finding yourself stuck in another one of those long, drawn-out circular discussions that never end, or that end in your partner hitting the kill switch and just leaving you high and dry, feeling totally abandoned and even worse off than when you started. For those who don't know me, my name's Stephanie Rigg. I'm a relationship coach and host of the On Attachment podcast, which is the world's leading podcast on how attachment shapes the way we live and love. I'm also someone who struggled with anxious attachment for many years and have done a lot of work to become more secure. And so everything that I speak to about anxious attachment is drawn from my own library of experience, as well as my professional experience in helping thousands and thousands of anxiously attached people to do the work of becoming more secure themselves. Okay, so let's get right into it. The first tip that I'm going to share is slow down and say less. Now, what usually happens for anxiously attached people is, leading up to conflict, you have probably been having practice conversations in your head. You've been thinking about the relationship incessantly. You've been going back and forth on, am I asking too much? Am I being unreasonable? No, I'm not being unreasonable. I am going to talk about this thing. Or maybe you've been really tiptoeing around the issue. Maybe you've been gathering up all of this evidence, and eventually you get this opportunity to speak. And usually by the time that rolls around, you have so much to say because you have been thinking so much about it, not to mention how heightened the emotions are because there's so much vulnerability and perceived risk attached to expressing yourself in this way. So when you're finally given your window of opportunity, you can really come out guns blazing with so much to say. And if you're in a relationship with someone who's more avoidant, it's really important to recognize that you are coming at this from completely different places. So someone who's more avoidant, I can almost guarantee you, has not been rehearsing these conversations in their head, ruminating over it, Googling, watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, reading books, trying to figure out what they're going to say and how they're going to say it. They're probably coming into it with more or less a blank slate. And for someone who is more avoidant, who tends to slow down in conflict, whose nervous system tends to go into more of a dissociative state during conflict, contrast that with someone who's more anxious, whose nervous system mobilizes, ramps up, gets really activated during conflict. So it really dials up the speed and intensity. We can zoom out and look at it from a bird's eye view and see that these people are doing conflict completely differently. And when you have an avoidant partner who might have less of an emotional vocabulary, who might be generally less comfortable with these kinds of conversations, if you come at them with what feels like an avalanche or a torrent, a tsunami of feelings and thoughts and analysis, there's a really good chance that that's going to overwhelm their system and they're going to shut down straight out of the gate. So if you can slow down and literally say fewer words, so leave pauses. I think that's another thing that we can do. It's something I've had to really consciously train myself out of. If I've shared something and my partner is thinking and taking it in and he's not saying something for maybe a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes, the anxious impulse to be like, oh, aren't you going to say something, and keep poking and poking because we're so uncomfortable with the slower pace, with the silence, with the processing, that can be really uncomfortable, but it is not helpful to try and force someone to match our pace when that's just not the way that their system works and is processing. So if you can really consciously slow yourself down, and that will actually help you, because continuing to snowball at that really fast pace is increasing your stress levels, your stress response, which is the opposite of what you want in what's already a challenging conversation. You want to try and stay as regulated as possible. And one of the best ways to do that is, take a deep breath, slow down, say fewer words, allow things to process and unfold rather than feeling like you have to race to be heard, that you have to just fill the space with more words and more explanation and more persuading and more follow-ups. Like, just slow down and say fewer words. I promise that will help. Okay, next tip that I want to give you is keep it to one issue. It's kind of related to the first one, but what anxiously attached people tend to do, because we bottle so much up from this place of, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to be upset by this thing, I don't want to push them away, I don't want to seem too needy, I don't want to seem too sensitive, but of course we're still being affected by those things, we're just not speaking up about them in real time. And so again, when we finally get handed the microphone, when there's finally an opportunity for us to express ourselves, we don't just talk about the one thing that triggered the conversation or the argument, we bring the shopping list of all of the other things that we're actually harboring discontent or resentment around. And again, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, what started as a conflict about one thing, suddenly we're hitting them with this tirade of, actually, I'm pissed off at you for these other 10 things that you never do right and you're always disappointing me. And of course, that is likely to lead someone to shut down, to say like, whoa, this is too much. Like, what have I even done here? You're so angry at me. You're so upset with me. And I thought that we were just arguing about the fact that I forgot to bring the milk home. And suddenly you're telling me that I don't care about you and I never show you love and like all of these things, right? It gets so quickly magnified because we are bringing so much to the conversation. And of course, part of that is bigger work around getting better at not harboring those things, at not burying stuff away. But for the context of this discussion, try and keep these conversations to one issue, and you are much more likely to get to some semblance of a resolution on that issue, rather than if you bring all of these other things into the conversation and you're probably not going to get resolution on any of them, and you're going to feel even more resentful and dismissed and uncared for, which obviously is not a good outcome. So keep it to one issue if you can. And the third one is know when to accept a good enough solution and let things go. For anxiously attached people, it can be really, really hard to take in reassurance. We want so much reassurance, and yet when someone gives us the reassurance that we've been asking for, even if they say the exact words that we wanted them to say, there's still a part of us that's like, yeah, but do you really mean it? Or are you really going to do it? All of those things that inject doubt and stop us from actually just accepting good enough, because we are so oriented towards threat and the things that could go wrong and the potential problems. It's really hard to just accept a solution. And I think what that can do is lead us into these patterns where we just keep pushing. Again, speaking from experience, like, it can be really hard to let something go if we don't feel completely 100% satisfied with the solution. And of course, that can actually become quite self-centered, because someone might be extending an olive branch and we're kind of pushing it back in their face and saying it's not good enough. And we can see how that might land as quite demoralizing for the other person. Anything they offer up, we're just throwing back in their face and saying like, well, you're not really going to do it, or you don't really mean it. It can very quickly feel like, well, nothing I say, do, try is going to satisfy you, so why bother? So I think it can be really helpful for us to just zoom out and go, big picture, can I accept a good enough solution here? Can I accept some resolution that might not be the perfect solution that I feel 100% satisfied by? Recognizing that doing this work in relationships, it's not a one and done thing. It's not just a one-time conversation with a one-time solution. It's probably something that you will have to revisit. But getting on the same page, being heard, even just resolving to try something new is a win. So taking that for what it is, rather than feeling like you need to have total guarantees that nothing bad is ever going to happen again, that's your anxiety talking, and it's asking for something that the person can't really give you, because you probably wouldn't believe them anyway. Even if they said, I promise I will absolutely never do this again, there's a good chance that you'd still come back with some sort of retort or some reason why you don't believe them. So recognizing, like, am I setting my partner up for like an impossible mission here? And how can I be a little bit more genuinely collaborative in coming up with a good enough solution that isn't actually just about me, that also takes my partner into account? Guys, if you found this helpful, I have a free masterclass on anxious avoidant dynamics that you should absolutely check out. I'll link that in the comments below. Otherwise, make sure that you like and subscribe for more videos on navigating anxious avoidant dynamics and building healthy, secure relationships. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you again soon.